Have you ever had a moment where your entire life, with all its plans and complexities, shrinks down to a single, terrifying word for me, sitting in a sterile beige-colored hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and fear? That word was failure, as in renal failure, as in my kidneys. The two bean-shaped organs I had been born with, the ones I had spent a lifetime trying to manage, were officially quitting. If you've ever had to ask for help from family you weren't entirely sure you could count on, then you know the specific kind of dread that was churning in my stomach. A dread that was colder and sharper than any of the needles in my arm. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to rely on someone you shouldn't have. I have polycystic kidney disease, or PKD. It's a lovely genetic parting gift from my father's side of the family. It's a slow-motion disease, one where your kidneys develop cysts that gradually grow, crowding out the healthy tissue until they just stop working. For 32 years, I had managed it. I ate the right foods. I took the right medications. I went to my doctor's appointments. I had built a life around my illness, working from home as a successful graphic designer, trying my best not to be a burden on anyone. But my best wasn't good enough anymore. Your GFR is below 15, Alara, Dr. Matthews said. His face kind but his words a death sentence. The dialysis is keeping you alive, but it's not a long-term solution. You're getting weaker. We need to talk, seriously, about a transplant. I knew this day was coming. I was on the national transplant list. Of course, I was one of over 100,000 names, waiting for a stranger to die so that I might live. The average wait time, he told me, was 3 to 5 years. I don't think you have that long, he said gently. The room went quiet. The only sound was the rhythmic, soft beep of the dialysis machine beside my bed. A machine that was both my lifeline and a constant reminder of my own body's betrayal. So what's the alternative, I asked, my voice a dry whisper. A living donor, he said. A kidney from a living person. It's the best option. The outcomes are better. The wait time is eliminated. The ideal candidates, of course, are immediate family members, parents, siblings. They have the highest probability of being a strong match. My family, my heart sank. My family's love had always felt conditional. My parents, Richard and Carol, were people who valued appearances and convenience above all else. My illness had always been an inconvenience to them, a source of expensive medical bills when I was a child, a topic of conversation to be avoided at their dinner parties. They loved me, I suppose, in their own detached way. But I had always been the sickly one, a problem in their otherwise perfect lives. And my sister, Chloe, my younger, healthier, golden child sister. She was a personal trainer, a beautiful, vibrant woman whose life was a testament to good health. Our parents had always sheltered her from the ugliness of my disease. She had never once come with me to a doctor's appointment, never sat with me during an infusion. We weren't close. We lived in different worlds. Hers was a world of 5K races and green smoothies. Mine was a world of hospital rooms and blood tests. Now, my life depended on these three people, on their generosity, on their love, on their willingness to undergo a major surgery to save my life. The dread in my stomach was a cold, hard knot. I called them that afternoon and asked them to come to the hospital for a meeting with my doctor. They arrived together, a united front of nervous energy. My mother clutched her purse. My father refused to make eye contact with me. Chloe was looking at her phone. Dr. Matthews explained the situation with clinical precision. He showed them the charts. He explained the reality of my declining kidney function. He walked them through the process of being a living donor, the testing, the surgery, the recovery. He was professional and clear. Then he left the four of us alone in the small, quiet room. I looked at their faces. My father, looking at a spot on the wall above my head. My mother, studying her perfectly manicured nails. My sister, scrolling through her Instagram feed. I know this is a huge thing to ask, I began, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. I know it's a major surgery, and it's scary, but I'm running out of time. I am so tired of being sick. Tears started to well up in my eyes. I need your help, I whispered. I need you to please, just get tested. Just to see if any of you are a match. That's all I'm asking. The silence that followed was deafening. It was a silence filled with 1,000 unspoken objections. "Well, this is all so sudden," my father finally said, still looking at the wall. "We need time to think about this, to weigh the risks." "Of course," I said quickly. "I know." "And Chloe," my mother said, her voice full of a sudden, fierce concern for her healthy daughter. "She's so young, and her career. Her body is her career. A major surgery like that." She let the sentence hang in the air, unfinished. Chloe finally looked up from her phone, her expression one of pure panic, as if I had just asked her to set herself on fire. I don't know. "Alara," she stammered. "I mean, what if there are complications? I have clients who depend on me." They weren't saying no, not outright. They were just expressing concern. They were being reasonable. They were weighing the risks. But I could see it in their eyes, in their averted gazes, in their stiff postures. The answer was no. My life was a risk they were not willing to take. "Please," I whispered one last time. The single word a raw, desperate plea, "just get tested." "We'll think about it, dear," my mother said, standing up and smoothing down her skirt. "We'll discuss it as a family, and we'll let you know. You just rest now. Don't worry." They left. They walked out of my hospital room, leaving me alone with the steady, rhythmic beep of the dialysis machine. They had left me with a tiny, fragile, and probably foolish glimmer of hope. I clung to it. They were my family, my blood. Surely, when faced with the actual reality of my death, they would not, could not, turn their backs on me. They would do the right thing. They had to. I closed my eyes and tried to believe it. I tried to picture a future where I was healthy, where my sister had saved my life, where my family had finally, in the face of death, shown up for me. It was a beautiful dream, and it was the last, most naive dream I would ever have. Hope is a dangerous thing. For 3 weeks, I clung to the flimsy hope my family had given me. It was a flickering candle in the sterile darkness of my hospital room. I told myself they were just scared, that they were processing, that, when faced with the reality of it, their love for me would win out over their fear. Every time I called, there was a new excuse. "Oh, Alara, I've just been so swamped with my new clients," Chloe would say, her voice a little too bright. "I literally haven't had a single day to even think about going to the clinic. But I will soon. Your father has been under so much stress at work. Dear," my mother would tell me, "it's just not a good time to add a major surgery to his plate. We have to consider his health, too." They were all perfectly reasonable excuses on the surface, but strung together, they formed a pattern, a wall of polite, smiling avoidance. They were waiting. I didn't know what they were waiting for. But with each passing day, as I grew weaker, as the dialysis machine became both my lifeline and my jailer, the cold dread in my heart grew. Finally, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I called my father and I forced the issue. "I need an answer," I told him, my voice stronger than I felt. "A real one, yes or no. I need you all to come to the hospital tomorrow, and I need you to tell me to my face." He agreed, his voice heavy with a sigh, as if I were forcing him to perform some unpleasant but necessary task. They arrived the next afternoon. A united, somber front. They stood at the foot of my hospital bed, a tribunal of judges ready to deliver their verdict. My father, the spokesman, couldn't even look at me. He stared at the heart monitor on the wall, its steady beep a counterpoint to my own frantic pulse. "Alara," he began, his voice low and formal, "your mother, Chloe, and I have discussed this at length. We have weighed all the options, and we've made a decision." He took a deep breath. "We can't do it. We're sorry. The risks are just too great." The candle of hope inside me finally flickered and died, plunging me into a cold, complete darkness. I had been expecting it, but hearing the words spoken aloud was still a blow that knocked the wind out of me. "The risks," I whispered, tears beginning to burn my eyes. "It's a major surgery," my mother jumped in, her voice full of a sudden, theatrical concern for her healthy daughter. "Chloe's entire career depends on her physical fitness. A scar, a long recovery. It could be devastating for her brand. And I just don't think I could handle it," Chloe added, her voice a pathetic little quiver. "I'm not as strong as you. Alara, I'm just not." They had their excuses all prepared, a neat little chorus of self-preservation. I started to cry then, quiet, hopeless tears. I was dying, and my family was worried about a scar. So that's it, I sobbed, looking at the faces of the three people who were supposed to love me most in the world. You're going to let me die. And that's when my father made his fatal mistake. In his clumsy, desperate attempt to justify their monstrous decision, he revealed the ugly, rotten truth that had been festering beneath the surface all along. Now, don't be so dramatic, Ilara, he said, a note of irritation in his voice. It's not like that. We're just being practical. We have to be. We've been looking into your finances, getting your affairs in order for you, just in case. He cleared his throat. And, well, you're very well insured. That life insurance policy your grandmother set up for you when you were born. It's quite substantial. At least we know that at least we would know that your mother and Chloe would be taken care of financially. That brings us some comfort. The words hung in the air. My quiet sobs stopped. The tears dried on my face. A profound, bone-deep chill washed over me, colder than any fear I had ever known. My life insurance. Have you ever had a moment of such perfect, horrifying clarity that it feels like the world stops spinning? That was that moment. They weren't afraid of the surgery. They weren't worried about a scar, or a long recovery, or their stress levels. They had done a cost-benefit analysis of my life, and I was worth more to them dead than I was alive. They weren't just letting me die. They were waiting for it, hoping for it. It was their financial plan. My life insurance, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I looked at my mother. I looked at my sister. Their faces were pale. They knew he had said too much. Now, that's not what I meant. My father started to backpedal, his own face flushing with a guilty red. I just meant that it's a comfort to know that you have a legacy, but the truth was out. The ugly, monstrous, unforgivable truth was out in the open, squirming in the sterile, fluorescent light of my hospital room. They saw my life not as a precious thing to be saved, but as a winning lottery ticket they were waiting to cash. The grief inside me, the pathetic, pleading hope that they would love me, it all just vanished. It was burned away by a rage so cold and so absolute it felt like a diamond forming in my chest. I looked at them. The three people who shared my blood, my father, the weak, greedy man who was looking at the heart monitor as if waiting for it to flatline, my mother, the silent, complicit partner in his greed, and my sister, Chloe, the golden child, who was willing to let her own sister die, rather than risk a scar on her perfect, toned stomach. They were not my family, they were my beneficiaries. I reached over and pressed the call button for the nurse. I think you should all leave now, I said, and my voice was a stranger's. It was flat and cold and dead. The visit is over. They practically scrambled out of the room, their faces a mixture of guilt and relief. They had delivered their verdict. They had left me to die. I lay alone in the quiet room, the steady beep of the machine the only sound. But I was not the same woman they had left behind. The pleading, hopeful daughter was gone. In her place was someone new, a woman who had just looked into the very heart of her family and had found nothing but a cold, dark, empty space where their love was supposed to be. They had given me a death sentence, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would survive. I had to, if only to make them regret the day they decided I was worth more to them dead. In the weeks that followed my family's verdict, I began to prepare for my own death. There is a strange, quiet clarity that comes with knowing your time is limited. The anger I had felt towards my family faded, replaced by a profound, hollowed-out resignation. They had made their choice. Now I had to make mine. I spent my days hooked up to the dialysis machine, feeling the life being slowly, methodically leached out of me. I was so tired, a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep could not touch. I started meeting with a hospital grief counselor. I updated my will, not the one my grandmother had set up, but my own, leaving my small apartment and my design company to a close friend. I wrote letters to the few people in my life who had shown me genuine kindness. I was trying to die with a dignity my family had not afforded me in life. I had accepted my fate. I had given up hope. And that, of course, is when the miracle happened. I was dozing in my chair when Dr. Matthews burst into my room. He didn't knock. His face, usually so calm and composed, was flushed with an excitement so intense he looked like a different person. "Alara," he said, his voice breathless. You're not going to believe this. It's a 1 in a million shot. It's impossible, but it's real." I just stared at him, my mind too foggy to process his energy. "There was an accident," he explained, speaking quickly. "A car crash, the victim was brain dead. An organ donor, their blood type, Alara. Their blood type is a perfect match, a perfect 6-antigen match. We got the call less than an hour ago. There is a kidney for you, right now, if you want it. It's yours, but we have to move, immediately." The words didn't register at first. A kidney, a perfect match. For me, it was a statistical impossibility, a lottery ticket I had never bought. Tears began to stream down my face, hot and sudden. It wasn't a family member. It was a stranger, a ghost, a person I would never meet, never know, never be able to thank, was about to save my life. "Yes," I choked out. "Oh my God. Yes, I want it." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Nurses, surgeons, anesthesiologists. I was prepped for surgery in a daze. As they wheeled me towards the operating room, I had a moment of pure, strange clarity. I was being given a second chance at life. A life gifted to me not by my own blood, but by the profound, anonymous kindness of a stranger. My last thought before the anesthesia took me under was, I will not waste this gift. I woke up groggy, in pain, with 1,000 tubes coming out of me, but the first thing I noticed was the taste in my mouth. For years, everything I ate had a faint, metallic tang. The taste of poison building up in my blood. It was gone. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and for the first time since I was a teenager, the air tasted clean. I was alive. Really, truly alive. The recovery was long. And it was lonely. I spent 2 more weeks in that hospital room. No flowers arrived. No visitors came. My family, I learned from a sympathetic nurse, had not even called to check on my status. They were waiting, presumably, for a different kind of call from the hospital. And in that quiet, lonely room, as my new kidney began to work and my body began to heal, my mind began to work, too. The full weight of my family's betrayal, no longer clouded by the fog of my illness, settled on me with a chilling, diamond-hard clarity. They hadn't just refused to help me. They were actively, patiently, waiting for me to die so they could collect their inheritance. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had, in their hearts, already buried me. A stranger gave me their own body part so I could live. My own family wouldn't even give me a phone call. The contrast was so stark, so absolute, that it rewired something deep inside me. I realized I did not owe them anything, not my time, not my forgiveness, and certainly not the news that their financial plans had just been ruined by a miracle. My old life, my old self who had so desperately craved their approval. She had died in that hospital room. They had killed her. And this new person, this woman with a stranger's kidney and a second chance at life, she owed them nothing. I called the one person in the world I knew I could trust, my friend Maria, a sharp, fiercely loyal woman who had been my divorce lawyer years ago and had become a close friend. I told her everything, the diagnosis, my family's refusal, the insurance policy, and the miracle. She listened in stunned, furious silence. "So what now?" she asked when I finished. "Do we call them and tell them to go to hell?" "No," I said, a new, wild, and audacious plan taking shape in my mind. "We do something better. They wanted me dead. They were waiting for me to die. So, let's give them what they want." Maria was silent for a beat. "Alara, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to disappear," I said, my voice full of a new, cold strength. "They think I'm dying. My medical records show a terminal diagnosis. No one from my family has bothered to check in. I want you to help me die, legally." "That's insane," she breathed, "but it might just be possible. We use the terminal diagnosis. We file the paperwork. We can say you were transferred to a private hospice facility for your final days, a facility with a strict privacy policy. It's a long shot, but given their complete lack of contact, it could work. I want to do it, I said. I want to bury the woman my family killed, and I want to be reborn as someone else, somewhere else. And so, my great escape began. While I recovered, Maria, my brilliant shark of a lawyer, got to work. She created a new identity for me, a new name, a new history. My own graphic design skills came in handy. I could create flawless identity documents, a new passport, a new life on paper. Maria, acting as my legal representative, began the process of restructuring my finances, my assets, my company, my savings. Everything was quietly transferred into a new, anonymous trust, controlled by my new identity. A month after my surgery, I was strong enough to leave the hospital, but I didn't go home. Maria arranged for me to be discharged discreetly. In the middle of the night, I walked out of that hospital, not as Alara, the sick girl, but as someone new. The next day, I was at the airport. I had one suitcase, a new passport with a name I was still getting used to, and a one-way ticket to a small, quiet coastal town in Portugal, a place where no one knew my name or my story. As I sat in the departure lounge, waiting for my flight to be called, I took out my phone. A message from Maria came through. "It's done. The hospice reported your passing an hour ago. The official death certificate will be issued tomorrow. You are, for all legal purposes, gone. Fly safe, my friend." I was a ghost now. I stood up and walked toward the gate. I didn't look back. There was nothing to look back to. Alara was dead, and I, this new woman, was about to begin my life. My new life began in a small, whitewashed village on the coast of Portugal. The air here smelled of salt, grilled sardines, and blooming bougainvillea. I rented a small, sunny apartment with a balcony that overlooked the glittering blue of the Atlantic. I bought new furniture. I adopted a stray cat. I introduced myself to my neighbors using my new name. I was a ghost, haunting a beautiful new life, and it was the most peaceful I had ever been. My body healed. The new kidney, a gift from a nameless, faceless stranger, worked perfectly. The constant exhaustion, the metallic taste, the feeling of being a prisoner in my own body, it all just faded away. I started taking long walks on the beach. I started painting again, a passion I had let wither during the long years of my illness. I was physically and spiritually being reborn, but a ghost is still tied to the world it left behind. And I knew there was one last piece of business I had to attend to, one final ceremony, my funeral. My lawyer, Maria, had handled everything with grim efficiency. The death certificate was issued, citing complications from end-stage renal disease. The official announcement was placed in the newspaper. My family, she told me, had scheduled the memorial service for 2 weeks after my passing. They're giving themselves a respectable grieving period before they can file the claim on the insurance policy, she'd said, her voice dripping with cynicism. I had one other friend back in the States, a tech genius named Ben, who was now my secret operative. On the day of the funeral, he walked into the funeral home, just another grieving friend paying his respects. But in the button of his suit jacket was a tiny, high-definition live streaming camera. Have you ever wanted to be a fly on the wall at your own funeral? Trust me. It's not as romantic as it sounds, especially when you have to watch your own family lie about how much they're going to miss you, all while they're mentally spending your life insurance money. I sat in my sunny Portuguese apartment, a cup of tea in my hand, and I watched my own memorial service on my laptop. The experience was profoundly, surreally disturbing. The funeral home was filled with my parents' friends and business associates. I saw my casket. A polished mahogany box that was, of course, closed. It was surrounded by massive, ostentatious bouquets of flowers. My parents had spared no expense on the performance of their grief. Then the eulogies began. My father was the first to speak. He stood at the podium, his face a mask of sorrow, and he spoke about his brave, tragic daughter. Alara was a fighter, he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. She battled her illness with such courage. We were so proud of her. Her mother and I. Our hearts are broken. We only wish we could have done more. I almost laughed. Oh, you could have done more, Dad. I thought, you just chose not to. He spoke for 10 minutes and never once mentioned a single real memory of me. He was eulogizing a concept, a tragic story, not a person. Then came Chloe, my sister. She walked to the podium looking like a perfect, grieving starlet in a simple but incredibly expensive black dress. She clutched a tissue in her hand and sobbed into the microphone. She was my best friend. She cried, the tears looking surprisingly real. I had to give her credit. She was a much better actress than I'd ever realized. She was so kind, so talented. The world is a darker place without her light. I don't know how I'm going to live without my big sister. It was a masterful performance. She hit all the right notes. She spoke of our shared childhood, conveniently leaving out the part where she had ignored me for most of it. She spoke of my bravery, conveniently leaving out the part where she had refused to help me be brave. But as I watched their fake tears and listened to their hollow, beautiful words, I saw what the camera couldn't capture. I saw the relief in my father's shoulders. I saw the flicker of impatient, greedy anticipation in my sister's eyes. They weren't mourning my death. They were celebrating their payday. The funeral was the final, clarifying act. Any lingering doubt, any residual, foolish hope that maybe they had loved me in their own twisted way, it all burned away in the fire of their hypocrisy. They had buried me, and now, it was time for me to bury them. That night, fueled by a cold, righteous fury, I sat down at my desk to write. I was going to write my own eulogy, a eulogy for the family that had died in my hospital room. It was the most important document I would ever create. I called it, simply, the letter. I wrote with a clarity and a precision I had never possessed before. I did not fill it with anger or emotion. I filled it with facts. To my family, I began. If you are reading this, it means you have gathered to collect on the life insurance policy you chose over my life. I hope my memorial service was satisfactory. I detailed the conversation in the hospital room, word for verbatim word. I quoted my father's practical justification about my life insurance policy. I described my sister's fear of getting a scar. I laid their betrayal out in clean, simple, undeniable prose. I then wrote about the miracle, about the kind, selfless stranger who had given me their kidney, who had given me the gift of life that my own family had refused. I wrote about my recovery, about my new life, about the peace and happiness I had found in a world without them. And then I wrote the final paragraph, the checkmate. I have created a new will, my entire estate, including the full, multi-million-dollar payout from the life insurance policy you were so eager to collect, has been irrevocably transferred into a new charitable trust. The trust will be used to fund organ transplants and living expenses for patients who, like me, have no family to support them. It is called the Second Chance Foundation. I finished the letter. I read it over once, my hand steady. It was a perfect, legal, and emotional execution. The next morning, I sent the letter via a secure international courier to Maria. Her instructions were simple. She was to hold it, sealed, until the day my family gathered to receive their inheritance. And she was to read it to them herself. The trap was set. The ghost had written her final message. All that was left was for the vultures to gather for the feast. And they were about to find the table was bare. The 6 months following my death were, from what Maria told me, a masterclass in performative grief. My family played their parts to perfection. My mother wore black for a respectable 3 months. My father spoke movingly to his friends about the tragedy of losing a child. My sister Chloe posted a heartbreakingly beautiful black and white photo of us as children on her Instagram, with a long caption about how she would never get over the loss of her best friend and guiding light. It got over 2,000 likes. They did everything right. They said all the right words. They went to grief counseling twice. They were the very picture of a bereaved family, bearing their tragedy with a quiet, noble dignity. And all the while, they were waiting for the life insurance policy to clear probate, waiting for the official, final meeting where the check for my life, or rather, my death would finally be handed over. That day finally came on a Tuesday in early spring. I, of course, was not there. I was 2,000 miles away in my sunny Portuguese apartment, looking at the photos Maria had sent me of the new spring blossoms in my small garden. But Maria was there, and later, she would recount the entire, glorious scene to me in painstaking detail, her voice full of a dark, triumphant glee. They arrived at her downtown law office right on time. A united front of somber, well-dressed vultures, my father, looking every bit the grieving patriarch in a dark gray suit, my mother, her face a mask of tragic bravery, and Chloe, looking chic and sorrowful in a simple but devastatingly expensive black dress. They were there to collect their prize. They sat down in the leather chairs opposite Maria's desk. "Thank you for coming," Maria began, her voice professionally neutral. She, of course, knew everything, and the effort it took for her not to just leap across the desk and throttle them was, she told me later, immense. "We have the final disbursement documents from the insurance underwriters," she continued, pushing a thick stack of papers across the desk. "The total value of the policy, after estate taxes, is $4.2 million. Maria said she watched their faces as she said the number. She saw the flicker of greed in my father's eyes. She saw my mother's hand go to her pearls, a gesture of pure, satisfied avarice. She saw Chloe's mask of sadness slip for just a second, replaced by a flash of triumphant, we're rich excitement. As per the beneficiary designation, the funds are to be split evenly between the three of you," Maria said, $1.4 million each. "Wonderful," my father said, reaching for a pen. "Let's get this signed. Then, it's been a long and difficult road." "Of course," Maria said, "there is just one final piece of business to attend to, a stipulation in Alara's final legal directives." They all looked up, their expressions shifting from excitement to mild annoyance. "Before any funds can be disbursed," Maria explained, her voice as cool and as formal as the legal document she was referencing. Alara left a sealed letter. Her instructions were very clear. The letter is to be read aloud, in its entirety, to the three of you, together in the same room. Once the reading is complete, you may sign the papers. The three of them exchanged glances. "A letter," Chloe said with a sigh, rolling her eyes ever so slightly. "Oh, Alara, so dramatic, even at the end." "It's probably just a sentimental goodbye," my mother whispered, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. "The poor, dear girl. Well, let's get on with it." "Then," my father said, a note of impatience in his voice. He wanted to get to the signing. He wanted his money. "Read the letter, so we can conclude this sad chapter." They thought they were about to listen to my last will and testament. They had no idea they were about to listen to my first. They thought it was a goodbye letter. They didn't realize it was a reckoning. Maria, my wonderful, loyal shark of a lawyer, reached into the drawer of her desk. She pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope, the one I had sent her from Portugal, the one with my final words inside. She placed it on the desk in front of them. The room was silent. My family looked at the envelope with bored, impatient expressions, like three people waiting for a tedious formality to be over so they could get on with the important business of being rich. They were completely, blissfully, arrogantly unaware of the bomb that was about to detonate in their perfectly curated lives. Maria picked up a silver letter opener. She looked at my father. She looked at my mother. She looked at my sister. She held their gazes for a long, silent moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she slit the seal. The trap was sprung. The ghost was about to speak, and nothing, for any of them, would ever be the same again. Maria took the letter from its envelope. The paper was thick and heavy. My family watched, my father tapping his fingers impatiently on the arm of his chair. They were ready for their money. Maria cleared her throat and began to read. The words that filled the room were not hers. They were mine. "Dear father, mother, and Chloe," she began, her voice clear and steady. "If you are hearing these words, it means you have gathered together in a lawyer's office to collect your prize. It means I am dead. I hope the funeral was to your liking. I watched it. You know, from my apartment overlooking the ocean. Your performances were very convincing, Chloe. The tears were a particularly nice touch." Maria told me later that the moment she read that line, a visible jolt went through the room. My father sat bolt upright. Chloe let out a small gasp. My mother's hand flew to her chest. They looked at each other, their faces a mask of confusion and dawning horror. Maria continued reading, her voice never wavering. "I'm sure you're confused. Let me explain. I'll be direct. Because I know you value practicality above all else. You did, after all, make a very practical decision regarding my life. I remember our last meeting in my hospital room. You told me the risks of donating a kidney were too great. Chloe was worried about a scar. Mom was worried about the recovery time. Dad was worried about his stress levels. All very understandable concerns. But then, Dad, you let the truth slip. You told me not to be so dramatic. You told me that you had been looking into my finances. You told me that it was a comfort to know that my substantial life insurance policy would take care of my mother and Chloe after I was gone. You didn't just let me die. You did a cost-benefit analysis of my life, and you, my own family, decided I was worth more to you dead than alive. At this point, Maria said my father leaped to his feet. This is insane. It's a trick. This is not Ilara's writing. Sit down, Richard, Maria commanded, her lawyer's voice like a whip. As the executor of this estate, I am legally bound to read this letter in its entirety before any further business is conducted. If you interrupt again, I will have you removed. He sank back into his chair, his face a mottled, furious red. Chloe was pale as a sheet, staring at the floor. Maria continued, I'll admit, that was a low point for me, lying in that hospital bed, knowing my own family was waiting for me to die. But then, a funny thing happened on the way to the grave. A miracle, a stranger. A person who had died in an accident. A person whose name I will never know. Gave me their kidney while you were waiting for me to die. A team of brilliant and dedicated surgeons were saving my life. The surgery was a complete success. I am happy to report, in perfect health. My new kidney and I are getting along wonderfully. I realized during my recovery that the life I had before, the one where I so desperately craved your love and approval, was a sick one. This new life, this second chance, was a gift from a stranger, and I decided I would not waste it on people who would have gladly attended my funeral. So I disappeared. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. I let you bury me, and I started over. I have a new name, a new home, and a new life, one where I'm surrounded by genuine kindness and love. Which brings us to today, the matter of the money, my money. Maria said she paused and looked up at them then, at their ashen, horrified faces. They finally understood. There was no inheritance. There was only this judgment, this voice from beyond the grave they had dug for me themselves. I have, of course, drafted a new will, Maria read, delivering the final, beautiful, killing blow. My entire estate, my savings, my design company. And yes, the full $4.2 million payout from this very life insurance policy has been irrevocably transferred into a new charitable foundation I have established. It is called the Second Chance Foundation. It will be dedicated to providing financial grants to transplant patients who, like me, find themselves without family support during their time of need. The paperwork is, as you would say, Dad, ironclad. So there is no money for you today. There is no inheritance. There is nothing for you here but this letter. And the truth, I release you. You are free from your burden of a daughter and a sister. I wish you well with the life you have chosen. Goodbye. When Maria finished reading, the silence in the room was absolute. Then Chloe let out a strangled, ugly sob. My father just sat there, his face gray. A man who had just lost a lottery he didn't even know he had won. Maria stood up. As there are no funds to be disbursed, she said, her voice crisp and final. This meeting is concluded. She walked to the door and opened it for them. And that's the story. My family, who had chosen money over my life, ended up with neither. They were left with only the shame of their own greed, exposed in the cold, hard light of a lawyer's office. I am still here, in my sunny little village in Portugal. I spend my days painting and walking on the beach and running my foundation. I read the stories of the people we help, people whose own families have failed them, and I feel a profound sense of purpose. I have built a new family, a family of second chances. My old family tried to bury me, but they didn't know that they had planted a seed, and from the ugliest, most painful betrayal, a new, stronger, and far more beautiful life has grown. Thank you for listening. If you've ever had to start over, to build a new life from the ashes of an old one, I want to hear about it. Like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who needs to be reminded that even after the darkest night, the sun will always, always rise again. I'll see you next time.